Do the work. Hey everybody, this is Stephen with Breathe, Pray, Worship again. Recently, I was asked by one of our subscriber followers, what do we mean by do the work? It's a phrase we've used. It's one of our 6 practices that we kind of believe in here at Breathe, Pray, Worship. And so I wanted to jump into that a little bit. I think the person asking this question actually, I think they were hoping for a formula, a little bit of like, here are, simple, easy steps, and you just plug your scenario into that. And just the reality of do the work, it's going to look differently for everybody. We're on a journey, right, through brokenness and through this healing process, and hopefully we're going to reach the spot where we're healthy. Doing the work is going to be unique to each person's story, each person's experience of brokenness. And I can't just give you a formula. It's not a plug and play. It's not a 3 simple steps. What I can do, though, is share my story of what it meant for me to do the work in my journey. Most of you guys know, kind of a big revelation time for me in dealing with this was going through a divorce as a pastor. And divorce is still something that's just it's taboo in the Christian church still. And so there was a lot to this process. I really felt like I had lost my identity. I felt like a failure as a pastor, failure as a husband, failure as a dad. And I needed to work through that. And I knew I wanted to get healthy for my kids, for me, for my life, and for God even, in terms of what it meant to continue living. And so I knew I needed to do the work, and I didn't necessarily have a context for this. But most of my life, I've worked with at-risk kids, and one of the things we do, if a kid is in crisis, we try to build a safety network around them as much as possible. We try to always convince youth leaders that you can't just be their superhero. You can't be the sole, only person that's going to swoop in and rescue a kid in crisis. There's just no guarantee that you can be there for them, and it's too much of a burden for any one person to carry. So I applied that to myself, and so I was very intentional to build this accountability team. Now, some people, they don't like the word accountable. Like, use whatever word you want. A support group, safety network, whatever, who cares what you call it. For me, I called it an accountability group, and I intentionally went out and invited people in to be a part of that. I'm a verbal processor, and I don't hide my emotions well. They're on my sleeve. Sometimes people say I overshare, but that's who I am. And so I knew I needed a safe group of people to do that. So I created this group. I made it private and secure. Only people in the group could see what I was posting and share and comment back. And I trusted these people, because I wanted them to be able, like, part of that group too is when you go through brokenness, everybody's going to have an opinion about what you should do, what you ought to do, how it should be done. And it's not always welcome. It's not always helpful. And so I wanted a group, a trusted group that I had invited in to be a part of that. These were spiritual leaders who could speak into my life, family who knew me really well, friends who had gone through the experience. But I was super intentional about who I led in that group, because I wanted to be healthy. But I also gave them permission to speak into my life, if they saw something unhealthy, to say, whoa, Stephen, or you're being too negative, or this isn't good. And reality is, I gave them permission to call me out on my bullshit. And so it was super helpful for me to be able to have this safe group of people to just talk with, communicate with, and that was huge for me. So having an accountability group, a safety net, support group that I could have authentic communication with was huge. I am going to say this again. I was super selective on who I invited in, and in long term, because I shared very raw emotion, not everybody could handle it. Some people actually chose to leave the group because it was too much for them to handle. And that's real, and that's okay. The other thing I did is I met with 2 pastors regularly for kind of pastoral counseling, and people are like, well, why'd you meet with 2? Why 2? One was a pastor who'd just been with me through a lot. We were pretty good friends. We worked in the same community. We collaborated on a lot. We'd just been through a lot of life with each other. So some of that was really proximity. Some of that was he was a friend. So was it a friend I was meeting with? Was it a pastor? I don't know, but I met with him regularly. And it was really great to be able to process and just kind of have his encouragement speaking life into me. The other was a pastor who had gone through a similar experience about 10 years before. And he actually ended up leaving ministry for 6 years, was back doing a kind of staff pastor role, speaking into people's lives. But he had been through the journey, and that was invaluable. We would meet pretty regularly. I just remember him constantly being like, okay, where you are is a good spot. You need to know that this is coming. And there would be like this new wave of emotion or depression or frustration or anger. And I'm just telling you, the guy was right, like consistently. And so having those two people to process with was huge. And then I reached a point where I actually went and started seeing a professional counselor and paying for a professional counselor. And I just can't express this enough. Sometimes still within the Christian world or certain realms, like mental health is a weird thing to talk about. And we believe like, oh, people should go to see counselor. But it's like, oh, you're seeing a counselor. What's wrong with you? Like what's right with me? I'm making a choice to get healthy. I'm making a choice for me to be the healthiest version I can be for my life, for my kids' life. And so yeah, I did the work. I went out and sought a professional counselor because I wanted to make sure I was healthy. I didn't want to be blindsided. I didn't want to have some issues that I was just ignoring. And having that outside perspective of somebody who didn't know me, didn't really know my world, but could be, that was huge to me. So I recommend that one. Funny enough, with this process, this professional counselor eventually fired me. He told me he was more than glad to keep taking my money, but that I didn't really need to see him because I was seeing these other two people and processing things with. I was being authentic and transparent with this accountability group. And his response was like, you're basically, when we see each other, you're catching me up with this story, but you're doing the work on your own. And he suggested we stop meeting regularly. Again, like, hey, I'm here. If a crisis comes up or something happens, like, let's set an appointment. But realized I was doing the work enough that I didn't need to keep seeing him. He didn't need to keep taking my money, which was encouraging and weird, right? My counselor just fired me. So other things I did too, I did a lot of reading. There were some books that I was pretty intentional about reading, just development of a man and some of the, especially childhood experiences and some of those things we carry over, some of the silences, some of that misogynistic crap that we bring into things and just dealing with it, which helped with some of the understanding. I also started exercising a lot. I had a lot of pumped up like energy and didn't know what to do with it, so I just started biking and I would just take off on rides. Awesome part, I got in the best shape of my life probably as an adult. I'm not there anymore, but the exercise was huge, right? So reading, studying, exercise. For me, it was an accountability group. Now here's the deal though. This is my story and this worked for me. Maybe this resonates with you, but it's not going to resonate with everybody, and I realize this. And here's part of the world too. So what I'd like you to do, one, subscribe to our channel, share it, hit like, all of that stuff. It helps us out to get this message out. But I want to know what are some of the things that worked for you. Because here's the deal. Your story matters, right? Somebody watching this film, they may not resonate with my story. They may not resonate with the steps I took to do the work. But they may resonate with your story. There may be something that you did that is just brilliant for you, and it might be a help to somebody else. So I'd really encourage you in the comments below, leave a comment, share what worked for you, and maybe it'll help other people. This is not just about us. This is about a community of people trying to be really intentional about the ministry of presence, that people don't have to walk through brokenness alone. People don't have to walk through the healing journey alone. But together, we can be a supportive community to help people get healthy.